Disney is quietly erasing Snow White from existence. Theaters are pulling screenings early.
1, 2.
Shelves are clearing out merchandise.
To everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. That despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere, people will wait in line to see.
And the company isn't saying a word about it. This isn't just a box office flop. It's a full-scale retreat, like Disney is trying to pretend this movie never happened. But the numbers don't lie. Snow White isn't just underperforming, it's collapsing in real time.
Disney's live-action remake of Snow White is officially one of the biggest flops in Hollywood history.
The first red flag? Empty theaters. Not just a few slow showings, we're talking ghost towns. One viral clip showed a 2 p.m. screening with exactly 2 people in the seats. 2, for a Disney princess movie. The vibe wasn't magical, it was downright eerie, like walking into a canceled school assembly. And it wasn't just one theater. Reports poured in from across the country. Seats gathering dust. Employees joking about refunding tickets to crickets.
Even if Disney still had the most talented people in the world working, with the best writers, with a good sense of narrative and the cultural moment, even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed.
Then came the ultimate humiliation, Lilo and Stitch. Yes, the animated classic about a chaotic little girl and her alien dog was quietly tracking to out-earn Snow White's entire domestic run in just its opening weekend. Let that sink in. A 20-year-old cartoon, no A-list stars, no $200 million budget, was about to stomp Disney's shiny new live-action disaster into the ground. But the real shocker? Lebanon didn't just ignore Snow White, they banned it. Not just in theaters, entirely. No imports, no digital releases, nothing. A full block. And here's the wild part. Nobody at Disney even fought it. No statements, no appeals, just silence. Like they saw the writing on the wall and let it happen. Meanwhile, the merch is collecting dust. Limited edition dolls, still on shelves. T-shirts, piled high in discount bins. Disney thought they could create artificial scarcity. But the demand was so weak they couldn't even fake it. This wasn't just a misfire, it was a cultural rejection. And behind it all, Rachel Zegler, the star who promised a groundbreaking new Snow White, the actress who swore fans would line up for her vision, the same person who, just months ago, was Hollywood's golden girl. Now, the internet's punching bag. The face of a flop so bad, Disney's quietly burning the evidence. But this wasn't just about bad luck, because behind the scenes, things were far messier than anyone realized.
Yes, it's all Rachel Zegler and her behavior. And if it was just one comment, it probably would have been forgotten by now. And it became such a disaster that they had to shut her up, which was the smartest move they made.
Just months ago, Rachel Zegler was unstoppable. Fresh off her West Side Story success, she stepped into the role of Snow White like it was destiny. Bold, unapologetic, and convinced the world would embrace her modern take on the classic princess. But then reality hit. Hard. It started with the interviews. Rachel didn't just defend her version of Snow White, she trashed the original, called it outdated, said her remake would fix the story. Fans revolted. Why? Because Disney's animated Snow White isn't just a movie, it's a legacy. And Rachel wasn't just updating it, she was dismissing it. The backlash was instant. Then came the box office. Despite Disney's massive marketing push, the numbers were brutal. Snow White limped past opening weekend with barely a whisper, failing to crack 100 million domestically. For context, The Little Mermaid remake, which also faced controversy, opened to 95 million in its first 3 days alone. Snow White didn't just flop, it drowned. But the real turning point? The empty theater video. Rachel showed up to a screening, flowers in hand, grinning like it was a victory lap, only for the camera to pan across rows of empty seats. The internet pounced. Memes exploded. Snow White and the 7 empty seats. She brought flowers to her own funeral. Even her emotional Instagram plea, teary-eyed, talking about flaws and cracks, couldn't undo the damage. The narrative had flipped. She wasn't the bold visionary anymore. She was the star who tanked Disney's princess formula. And Hollywood noticed, fast. Rumors swirled that Tangled, Disney's next live-action reboot, was quietly shelved. Coincidence? Unlikely. Rachel was reportedly in talks to play Rapunzel. But after Snow White's implosion, Disney wasn't taking chances. The message was clear. One flop can be bad luck. A pattern? That's a career killer. But here's the twist. Rachel wasn't the only one distancing herself from this disaster. Because behind the scenes, her co-stars were already jumping ship. The moment Gal Gadot was asked about working with Rachel Zegler, you could feel the tension. The evil queen herself didn't throw Rachel under the bus. She just stepped aside and let the bus roll right over her. In a carefully worded interview, Gadot called out the lack of teamwork on set, calling the experience exhausting. But it was her non-answer about Rachel that said everything. I'll talk about that when I feel comfortable. Translation? Something went very, very wrong behind the scenes. Fans dissected that line like a crime scene. Why would Gadot, a seasoned pro, hint at drama unless it was truly explosive? Then there was Andrew Burnap, Rachel's co-star, who mysteriously vanished from the entire press tour. No interviews, no red carpet, not even a social media post. And here's the kicker. Rachel had already joked to the press that all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Imagine working for months on a Disney film, only for your lead to casually suggest you might end up on the cutting room floor. No wonder he bailed. But the real bombshell? Reports of on-set chaos, whispers of constant rewrites, clashes over creative direction, and a toxic atmosphere that left even crew members frustrated. One insider described it as a sinking ship where everyone was too polite to mention the water. Disney's damage control was swift, but telling. They scrubbed promotional material, downplayed the film's importance, even let Tangled die quietly rather than risk another PR nightmare. Because in Hollywood, failure is one thing, but a toxic reputation? That sticks. And just when Rachel thought it couldn't get worse, the internet found its next victim. The memes were ruthless. The box office was catastrophic. But the final nail in Snow White's coffin came from the most unexpected place, a blocky, pixelated world where no one saw it coming. Just weeks after Snow White's disastrous debut, Minecraft, yes, the movie about building dirt houses and fighting green zombies, smashed box office records. No political messaging, no controversial casting, just pure, dumb fun. And audiences loved it. The irony was brutal. While Disney's 200 million princess epic climbed past 100 million, Minecraft sprinted past it in a weekend. The message was clear. Moviegoers were done with lectures. They just wanted escapism. But the internet wasn't done with Rachel yet. That viral empty theater clip, it became her defining moment. Parodies flooded TikTok. Late-night hosts mocked it. Even Minecraft fans joined in, joking that Snow White couldn't even fill a 4x4 dirt hut. The memes weren't just funny. They crystallized the narrative. Rachel had bet against the audience and lost spectacularly. Meanwhile, Disney's silence grew louder. No press releases defending the film, no heartfelt statements about creative risks, just radio silence, like they'd already moved on. And in Hollywood, that's the ultimate indictment, when even the studio won't fight for you. But here's the twist. This wasn't just about one bad movie. It was about something bigger, a tipping point. Because behind closed doors, Disney was panicking. Not just about Snow White, but about their entire live-action strategy. Behind the velvet ropes of Disney's Burbank headquarters, executives were scrambling. Emergency meetings, frantic strategy sessions. The numbers weren't just bad, they were catastrophic. Snow White was supposed to launch a new era of live-action reboots. Instead, it might have just killed the entire genre. First, the cancellations started rolling in. Tangled, the next crown jewel in Disney's live-action lineup, was shelved indefinitely. No announcement, no farewell. Just quietly wiped from the schedule like it never existed. Industry insiders whispered that Rachel Zegler was originally the top choice for Rapunzel. But after the Snow White disaster, Disney wasn't taking any chances. Then came the leaks. Anonymous studio sources revealed that Disney was conducting a full internal audit of their upcoming remakes. The mandate? No more controversy. No more reinventing the wheel. Early reports suggested that future projects like Moana and Hercules were being reworked to hue closer to the originals. No modern political twists, no deconstructing the classics, just the magic audiences remembered. But the most damning evidence came from Disney's own marketing. Snow White promotions were scrubbed from social media. Trailers were unlisted. Even cast interviews were buried. It was a digital vanishing act, as if Disney was trying to erase this movie from history. And Rachel, she was caught in the crossfire. Once Hollywood's it girl, she was now radioactive. Rumor had it that casting directors were quietly passing on her for upcoming projects, not because she wasn't talented, but because she'd become synonymous with box office poison. Yet the real question wasn't about Rachel anymore. It was about Disney. Because if even they couldn't make a princess movie work anymore, what did that mean for the future of Hollywood? Snow White didn't just fail. It sent shockwaves through every studio lot in Hollywood. Because if Disney couldn't make a live-action princess movie work anymore, what did that mean for everyone else? Suddenly, executives were second-guessing everything. Other studios quietly delayed their own reboots and remakes, some indefinitely. The ones still moving forward? They were hastily retooled to avoid anything resembling controversy. Insider reports revealed frantic script rewrites, last-minute edits to remove modern messaging, and a sudden industry-wide obsession with just giving fans what they actually wanted. The numbers didn't lie. Audiences were voting with their wallets, and they weren't just rejecting Snow White. They were rejecting the entire formula. The Minecraft movie's runaway success proved it. People didn't want lectures. They didn't want reinventions of beloved classics. They wanted fun, escapism, stories that didn't make them feel guilty for enjoying them. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler's career hung in the balance. Just 2 years ago, she was the golden child, an Oscar-caliber talent handpicked by Spielberg himself. Now, the same industry that once fought to cast her was keeping its distance. No public statements, no rallying behind her. Just an eerie, uncomfortable silence. Even her most ardent defenders had gone quiet. But here's the twist. This wasn't really about Rachel. Not anymore. Because the real casualty of Snow White's collapse wasn't one actress. It was an entire era of Hollywood filmmaking. The age of message-first blockbusters. The assumption that audiences would show up no matter how much a studio changed the source material. The idea that nostalgia alone could carry a film, even if it openly mocked what came before. Disney had bet big on that formula. And now, they were paying the price. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. The truth is, Disney saw this disaster coming. Leaked internal documents reveal that early test screenings for Snow White scored catastrophically low, some of the worst in modern Disney history. Audience feedback was brutal. Feels more like a lecture than a fairy tale. Snow White isn't likable anymore. Why did they even make this? But instead of listening, executives doubled down. Reshoots were ordered, not to fix the story, but to amplify the very elements test audiences hated. Insiders say the studio was convinced the controversy would help the film, that the backlash was just noise from a vocal minority, that once general audiences saw it, they'd understand the vision. They were wrong. The box office wasn't just bad. It was a historic collapse. Snow White didn't just underperform, it became a case study in how not to adapt a classic. And the fallout was instant. Disney's stock plummeted. Shareholders demanded answers. The once unstoppable live-action remake machine ground to a halt. But the most damning detail? This wasn't really about Rachel Zegler. The leaks prove the problems ran far deeper than casting. The script was flawed from the start. The marketing misread the audience completely. And Disney's insistence on prioritizing modern messaging over storytelling alienated the very fans who should have been its core audience. Rachel didn't sink Snow White. She was just the unlucky face of a ship that was already sinking. Now, the industry is scrambling to learn the wrong lesson. Some studios are overcorrecting, shelving all female-led projects. Others are clinging to nostalgia even harder, greenlighting soulless reboots with no creative risks at all. But the real lesson is simpler. Audiences don't hate woke movies. They hate bad movies. And Snow White wasn't just bad, it was a warning. This isn't the end of Disney's live-action remakes, but it is the end of an era. One where studios could slap a coat of modern paint on a classic and call it progress. The backlash wasn't about politics. It was about respect. Respect for the source material, respect for the audience, and most of all, respect for the magic that made these stories timeless in the first place. As for Rachel Zegler, she'll survive. Hollywood loves a comeback story. But Disney, they've got a bigger problem. Because after this, fans won't just be skeptical of the next remake. They might not show up at all.